Ben sat on the edge of his bed, holding a letter close to his chest. The handwriting was neat and familiar. It was from his mom, Sarah. She always signed her letters with a little drawing of a star and the words, "Love you to the moon and back." Sarah was a soldier. She had been stationed overseas for the last 6 months. Every night, Ben read her letters before going to sleep. He kept them all in a small box under his bed. They were his treasure, each one full of love, stories, and questions about his day. Even though they were far apart, Sarah and Ben were still close. They talked on video calls whenever they could. Sometimes the calls didn't last long. Internet wasn't always strong, and Sarah's schedule was busy. But Ben didn't mind. Just seeing her smile made everything feel a little better. At school, Ben didn't talk much about his mom's job. Not many kids had parents in the military. He wasn't sure if they would understand. Some days, he just wished he could walk into the kitchen after school and smell her cooking or hear her humming to the radio. But the house stayed quiet. Ben lived with his grandma while his mom was away. Grandma was kind and tried her best to make things feel normal, but it wasn't the same. No one could fill the space Sarah left behind. One evening, while looking at the calendar, Ben sighed. Sarah had told him she might be able to come home for a visit soon, but nothing was certain. Her unit was still needed where they were, and plans often changed. Ben tried not to get his hopes up, but every time the phone rang, a tiny spark lit up inside him. He missed her laugh. He missed her hugs. But most of all, he missed the way she made him feel safe, like nothing in the world could hurt him. Ben used to enjoy going to school. He liked reading books, solving math problems, and helping his teachers. But lately, school didn't feel safe anymore. It felt heavy, like walking into a storm with no umbrella. It started with whispers in the hallway. His mom's in the army. Bet she taught him how to fight. Look at him. Thinks he's tough just 'cause his mom wears boots. At first, Ben ignored the kids. He kept his head down and hoped it would stop, but it didn't. Soon, boys in his class started pushing his backpack off his desk when the teacher wasn't looking. Someone even drew a mean picture of him on the whiteboard during recess. It had a big head and army boots with the words, "Mommy's little soldier," written underneath. The worst part was that no one stood up for him. Even the kids he used to play with at lunch stopped talking to him. Ben began eating alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, near the trash cans. He didn't tell his grandma. She was already doing so much for him, and he didn't want to make her worry. He definitely didn't tell his mom. He wanted her to focus on her work, not on his problems at school. But the bullying didn't stop. It got worse. One afternoon, as Ben was walking home, 2 boys from school followed him. They mocked his mom and called him names that made his face burn. One of them shoved him into a bush, laughing as they ran off. Ben brushed off the dirt and kept walking. He didn't cry, not until he reached his room and closed the door. That night, he didn't even feel like reading one of his mom's letters. He just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he had done wrong. He missed her more than ever. He missed her voice, her stories, and the way she called him, "my brave boy." But lately, Ben didn't feel very brave at all. It was a gray Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. Ben was sitting on the front steps of his school, waiting for Grandma to pick him up. He hugged his backpack tight and kept his eyes on the sidewalk. The day had been long. One of the boys had snapped his pencil in class, and the teacher didn't even notice. Then he saw a pair of boots. Not the usual sneakers or flats he was used to seeing after school, but tall, laced-up army boots. He looked up, and his heart jumped. It was her. "Mom?" he whispered, not sure if he was dreaming. Sarah smiled and opened her arms wide. "Hey, buddy." Ben dropped his bag and ran into her arms. His backpack thudded onto the pavement, but he didn't care. He held her so tightly it was like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. "I thought you weren't coming until next month," he said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I got a little surprise leave," she said softly. "Only 2 weeks, but I wasn't going to waste a second." Tears filled Ben's eyes, but this time they were happy ones. For the first time in a long time, he felt warm, safe. As they walked to the car, Sarah noticed how quiet Ben was. Normally, he would be bubbling with stories. She asked about school, but Ben just said it was okay. She could tell something wasn't right. His shoulders were tense and his eyes didn't light up the way they used to. That night, they sat on the couch, eating spaghetti and watching one of Ben's favorite cartoons. Sarah didn't push him to talk. She just stayed close, letting him lean against her side. Still, in her heart, Sarah knew something was bothering her son, and she was going to find out what it was. Over the next few days, Sarah watched Ben carefully. He smiled when she made his favorite pancakes. He laughed at her silly army stories, but when it came to school, his smile always faded. She noticed the little things first. Ben flinched when someone bumped into him at the store. He didn't want to go outside. He even jumped when she raised her voice to call the dog. One night, while Ben was in the shower, Sarah walked into his room to put away his clean clothes. She noticed his backpack on the floor, half open. As she reached down to zip it up, a paper slipped out. She picked it up. It was a drawing, crumpled and torn, with the same words Ben had mentioned once in a letter. Mommy's little soldier. The picture showed a stick figure with an oversized head wearing a helmet and crying. There were more papers inside. One had words scribbled in red marker. Go cry to your army mom. Sarah sat on the bed, holding the papers in her lap. Her hands shook. She felt her heart twist inside her chest. Anger, sadness, and guilt rushed in all at once. She hadn't been there to protect him. Later that night, she gently knocked on Ben's door. Can we talk for a minute? She asked. Ben sat on his bed, pulling his knees to his chest. He looked small, so much smaller than she remembered. I found some papers in your bag, she said quietly. You don't have to say anything, but I want you to know it's okay to tell me the truth. Ben's eyes filled with tears. He looked down and whispered, They hate me. Because of you. Sarah's breath caught. Because of me? They say I'm weird. And that you're not a real mom because you're always gone. His voice cracked. They push me. They laugh at me. I didn't want to make you sad. Sarah moved beside him and wrapped her arms around him. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. You didn't do anything wrong. And I'm here now. Ben leaned into her, sobbing quietly. In that moment, Sarah made a promise in her heart. The next morning, the sky was still dark when Sarah woke up. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window. Her uniform was hanging neatly on the back of the chair. She hadn't worn it since coming home, but today she would. She thought about everything Ben had told her. The pushing, the names, the way he said they hated him because of her. That hurt more than anything. She had spent her life protecting people, but somehow she hadn't protected the one person who mattered most. Not anymore. Ben came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He froze when he saw the uniform. You're wearing that? He asked quietly. Sarah stood up and smiled. Yes, I'm walking you to school. Ben's eyebrows scrunched. But people will stare. Let them, she said. They need to see who I am, and more importantly, who you are. Ben looked unsure. Sarah knelt, down in front of him. You know what strength is, Ben? She asked. He shrugged. It's not about fighting. It's about standing tall when things get hard. It's about protecting what matters. And right now, that's you. Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Sarah stood and gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. We'll walk in together. You won't be alone this time. On the way to school, they didn't talk much, but Sarah held Ben's hand the whole time. Her boots clacked on the sidewalk. Her uniform was crisp and clean, and her face was calm. But inside, her heart was pounding. She wasn't doing this to scare anyone. She was doing this to show her son what courage looked like, to remind him that love is louder than hate. As they reached the school gates, Sarah glanced down at Ben. You ready? She asked. He didn't say anything, but he squeezed her hand a little tighter. That was enough. When Sarah and Ben walked through the school gates, everything went quiet. Kids, stopped talking. A few dropped their juice boxes. One boy nudged his friend and pointed. Everyone stared. Ben felt his cheeks burn. He looked at the ground, but Sarah gently tapped his chin and whispered, "Hold your head up, sweetheart." So he did. Her uniform stood out, sharp and strong. Her name tag gleamed, and her boots made a steady sound with each step. She didn't march, but she didn't hide either. She walked with quiet power. Ben's teacher, Mrs. Carter, stood frozen in front of the door. Her eyes widened. "Oh, hello, Sergeant. Sergeant Lane?" "Good morning," Sarah said calmly. "I'm Ben's mother." Mrs. Carter smiled nervously. "Of course. Everything all right?" "Not exactly," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I'd like to speak with you and the principal. I have some concerns about how Ben has been treated." The teacher nodded quickly and led them down the hall. Ben walked beside his mom, his small fingers still holding hers. As they passed, students pressed against the lockers to get out of the way. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. One boy, a kid from Ben's class, whispered, "Is that your mom?" Ben didn't answer. He just kept walking. Inside the principal's office, Sarah explained everything. She showed the mean drawings and the notes. She talked about the bruises, the whispers, the fear her son had been hiding for months. The principal listened carefully. His face grew serious. "I'm so sorry," he said. "This is not acceptable. We'll make sure this is addressed right away." Sarah nodded. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I just want to make sure my son and every kid here is safe. That starts with adults noticing." After the meeting, as they walked out of the office, Ben looked up at his mom. "Do you think they'll really do something?" he asked. "I think they will," Sarah said. "But even if they don't, you stood tall today, and that matters more than anything." For the first time in a long while, Ben smiled, just a little, and for the first time, he didn't feel small. The next day at school felt different. Ben still felt nervous walking through the halls, but there was no pushing. No name-calling, no cruel whispers behind his back. In fact, it was quiet. Almost too quiet. Some kids stared when he walked in, but it didn't feel the same as before. It wasn't mean. It was more like curious. During lunch, Ben sat at his usual table near the corner, not expecting anyone to join him. But then a voice spoke up. "Hey, your mom's a soldier, right?" Ben looked up. It was James, one of the boys who used to ignore him. "Yeah," Ben said cautiously. James shifted, on his feet. "She looked cool. Like in a movie." Ben shrugged. "She's just my mom." James cracked a small smile. "Still, that was pretty awesome yesterday." He didn't sit down, but he didn't laugh or walk away either. That was new. Later, during art class, another boy slid over a box of colored pencils and said, "You can use the red ones. I know you like them." Ben blinked. "Thanks." Little by little, things started to shift. No one apologized out loud, not at first. But the kids stopped teasing. Some even started saying hi. A girl named Lily from the science club asked if Ben wanted to join their after-school project. "We're building a model rocket," she said. "Your mom's in the army. I bet you like stuff that flies." Ben smiled and nodded. "Sure, sounds cool." That afternoon, he came home more cheerful than he had in months. He told Sarah about the rocket project, about James, about lunch. Sarah listened with quiet pride, her heart feeling full. "See?" she said. "You're not invisible. You never were." "But I think they just didn't understand," Ben said. "Sometimes people are mean when they're scared or confused," Sarah said. "But it takes strength to be kind back." Ben thought about that. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a photo of Sarah in her uniform. "Can I hang this in my locker?" he asked. Sarah smiled. "You don't even have to ask." 2 weeks passed faster than either of them expected. The night before Sarah had to leave again, she and Ben sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. The sky was full of stars, tiny dots of light scattered across the dark. Remember when you used to say you'd take me to the moon and back? Ben asked softly. I still would, Sarah said, brushing his hair back. Anytime. Ben was quiet for a while. Then he said, I don't want you to go, but I'm okay now. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. That's all I needed to hear. The next morning, they hugged for a long time at the airport. Neither of them wanted to let go, but both knew they had to. I'll write every week, Ben promised. And I'll write back every chance I get, Sarah said. No matter how far I am, I'm always with you. As Sarah disappeared through the security gate, Ben watched until she was out of sight. He didn't cry, not this time. Instead, he reached into his backpack and touched the folded photo of her in uniform, the one he kept in his locker now. Back at school, things continued to change. Ben walked the halls with his head high. He joined the science club and even made a new friend named Alex, who had a dad in the Navy. They understood each other without needing to explain everything. The kids who used to tease him kept their distance. Some even smiled or nodded in the hallway. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. One day, during class, his teacher pointed to a bulletin board decorated with pictures of local heroes. There, right in the center, was Sarah's photo. Ben grinned. He wasn't ashamed of who his mom was anymore. He was proud, and every time he walked past that board or opened his locker and saw her smiling in uniform, he remembered. He was her brave boy, and that meant he could be strong too. If you enjoyed Ben and Sarah's journey of strength, love, and resilience, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone made a difference in your life? Let us know. If you want to read more inspiring stories like this one, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales that will warm your heart and remind you of the power of family, courage, and kindness.